The elders of old used to say that a child who follows a stranger's sweetness into the bush will meet the very leopard that stranger was running from. Mwam, not everybody that smiles at you loves you. Be careful out there.
My people, the elders of old used to say that a child who follows a stranger's sweetness into the bush will meet the very leopard that stranger was running from. Ndidiamaka's mother spoke words close to this the day her daughter packed 2 Gonamusco bags and left for university. But some lessons refuse to enter through the ear. They must first pass through fire before they settle in the heart. And that fire came for Ndidiamaka on a night she never saw approaching. The liquid Aunty Ronke's men forced down her throat burned like hot palm oil poured straight into her chest. Her legs gave way beneath her before her mind could understand what was happening. Low voices chanted above her, steady and rehearsed, like a song offered to many girls before her. The last thing she remembered was Tarela's voice breaking in terror. This one is fighting too much. Get her out. Get her out now, before it is too late. Then darkness swallowed her completely. When Ndidiamaka opened her eyes again, she lay on the cold hospital floor with a needle taped roughly to her hand. 2 familiar voices argued behind a thin curtain. If she wakes up and starts talking, everything we have built will scatter. She was not supposed to wake up at all, the other whispered. That was what they promised us. Her chest tightened like a rope drawn around her heart. Those were not the voices of strangers. Those were the voices of the 2 girls she had called her best friends. Before we continue, my people, drop your location for me in the comment section. Where are you watching this life-changing story from tonight? Hit that subscribe button, tap the like, because what happened to this girl on a Nigerian campus is the kind of story that will make you hold your daughter, your sister, your best friend a little tighter tonight. 3 months before that night, Ndidiamaka was simply a village girl chasing a better life. Egbeda State University swallowed her the way it swallows every fresh student, noisy, confusing, exciting, lonely, all at once. Her mother had walked her to the park the morning she left, pressed a small Bible and a rolled wad of naira into her palm, and held her face between 2 worn hands. "NWAM," she said, "not everybody that smiles at you loves you. Some people will hold your hand only to see where the fire will catch you." Ndidiamaka nodded the way children nod at warnings they do not yet understand, kissed her mother's cheek, and boarded a bus that would carry her toward a life she could not have imagined even in her worst dream. Her roommate, a soft-spoken second-year called Chidinma, was the first to notice things Ndidiamaka herself was too dazzled to see. It was Chidinma who first raised an eyebrow when Beluchi found Ndidiamaka on the long queue outside the faculty building, mouth already running about one wicked lecturer who had failed half the class. Beluchi had a way of filling empty spaces with her voice, the kind of girl who could make a stranger feel chosen within 5 minutes. "You are too quiet for this school, my dear," Beluchi said, hooking her arm through Ndidiamaka's like they had grown up in the same compound. "Stay close to me, I will show you how this place works." Ndidiamaka came back to the room that night glowing, describing her new friend with the excitement of someone who had finally been noticed. Chidinma listened, then said carefully, "Just be careful, okay? Some of these popular girls, they don't just carry you along for nothing. You're just jealous." Ndidiamaka laughed, and did not think of it again. 2 weeks later came Tarela, elegant, watchful, dressed like money nobody ever saw her spend. She rarely opened her mouth, but when she did, people leaned in, the way you lean in for someone you are slightly afraid of. Soon the 3 of them moved as one, the kind of trio hostel mates pointed at and whispered about, those ones, they move like sisters. Nobody asked what kind of sisters. At first the signs were small, small enough for a hungry heart to swallow without chewing. Beluchi paying for suya when Ndidiamaka's allowance had finished days ago. Tarela, just like that, gifting her a wig that cost more than her mother's monthly garri sales. Ndidiamaka, raised watching coins counted under lamplight, did not know how to refuse kindness, even the kind that made a small voice inside her ask, quietly, how 2 undergraduates could afford to be this generous. Stop thinking too much, Beluchi laughed one evening, counting out new naira notes like they meant nothing to her. We have someone that helps us. Aunty Ronke. She does not like watching serious, sharp girls suffer over school fees. You will meet her soon. Chidinma, folding clothes on her side of the room, did not look up. Nobody just gives out free money in this Nigeria, she muttered. Not even your own father. Must everything be suspicious to you? Ndidiamaka snapped, sharper than she meant to. Chidinma said nothing more that night, only turned her back to sleep, and something in that silence should have told Ndidiamaka more than any warning could have. She did not know then that the next time she needed someone to believe her, it would be Chidinma's number she would think of first, and by then, it might already be too late. Aunty Ronke was nothing like Ndidiamaka expected. Not loud, not flashy, soft-spoken, expensively dressed, receiving them inside a duplex with white curtains and the smell of imported candles. She held Ndidiamaka's hands a moment too long, studying her face the way a buyer studies fabric before purchase. So this is the one, she murmured, more to Beluchi than to her. God has finally been faithful. Ndidiamaka smiled shyly, flattered, unaware of the look that passed quickly between her two friends, a look heavy with guilt neither of them could name aloud. She did not notice Tarela's fingers trembling around her cup of Chapman. She did not notice Beluchi's eyes refusing to meet Aunty Ronke's for longer than a second. You people said nobody would be asking questions about her back at the hostel, Tarela whispered to Beluchi later, in the toilet, water running to hide their voices. That roommate of hers, Chidinma, has been asking her too many questions. Chidinma is not the one I am worried about, Beluchi whispered back, and something in her voice cracked just slightly. Look at her, Tarela. She reminds me of myself before all this started. Do not start that thing again, Tarela hissed. You know what happens if we fail Aunty Ronke a second time. Neither of them said what that meant. Neither of them needed to. Weeks later, gifts turned into an invitation, an all-expenses leadership retreat for promising young women, somewhere quiet outside the city. Her friends would be there too, she was assured. Her life was about to change forever. She called her mother that night to share the good news, and her mother's voice went suddenly, strangely still on the line. This woman, what is her name again? And these two friends, how long have you even known them? Mama, please, allow me to breathe small, Ndidiamaka laughed, brushing off the unease crawling into her mother's tone. Not everything must be Walla. Her mother was quiet for a long moment, the kind of quiet that carries more weight than shouting. Just call me before you travel, she finally said. And after you reach. Ndidiamaka promised she would. She did not know those careless words, allow me to breathe small, would be the last light thing she ever said to her mother before the walls of her new life began to close in around her, silently, completely. The morning of the retreat, Chidinma stood at the hostel door with her arms folded, refusing to help carry the bag. I have a bad feeling about this one, she said quietly. Just text me when you reach, please. You worry too much, Ndidiamaka said, hugging her quickly before rushing to meet Beluchi and Tarela at the gate. She did not see the way Chidinma stood there long after the taxi disappeared, chewing the inside of her cheek, already deciding to keep her phone close that night. The taxi ride out of the city took almost 2 hours, the tarred road slowly giving way to red laterite, the noise of Egbeda thinning into nothing but wind and the occasional cry of a bird crossing overhead. Ndidiamaka noticed, somewhere along the way, that neither Beluchi nor Tarela was speaking the way they normally did. Beluchi kept checking her phone and putting it away without reading anything. Tarela stared out of the window with her jaw set tight, the way a person stares when they are trying very hard not to cry. Are you people okay? Ndidiamaka asked, half laughing, half uneasy. We're fine, Tarela said too quickly. Just tired. The driver, an older man who had said almost nothing since they entered his car, glanced at Ndidiamaka once in the rearview mirror, a long, strange look, somewhere between pity and warning, before quickly returning his eyes to the road. She would replay that look many times in the months that followed, turning it over and over, wondering what exactly he had known that he chose not to say. The retreat house sat behind a tall iron gate at the end of an unmarked bush road, the kind of silence around it that swallows sound whole. There was no seminar. No other promising young women waiting to network. Only a shrine room lit with candles, red cloth spread across the floor, strange symbols painted along the walls, and 7 other girls Ndidiamaka had never met before, all wearing the same glassy, surrendered calm. The look of people who had already stopped fighting. Beluchi would not meet her eyes. Tarela's hands shook as she smoothed white wrappers across the floor. "It will be over quickly," Aunty Ronke said gently, the way a woman comforts a child before an injection. "And after tonight, none of you will ever lack again." The truth arranged itself in Ndidiamaka's mind faster than her legs could carry her backward. The gifts, the sudden warmth, the way Beluchi had found her so quickly, so easily, as if she had been marked before she even wrote her matriculation exam. "Beluchi," she whispered, voice shaking. "What is this place? What is happening to me?" Beluchi finally looked up, and what stared back was not wickedness. It was something far heavier, grief. "I am sorry," she mouthed silently. "I did not have a choice. Soon, you will understand." An old man Ndidiamaka had not noticed before stepped out from behind a curtain of raffia, a wrapper tied around his waist, his chest bare and marked with white chalk in patterns she did not recognize. Behind him, 2 younger men carried in a small wooden table crowded with stacks of naira and folded dollar bills, along with a black clay pot from which smoke curled upward in a thin, deliberate line. This, Ndidiamaka would only understand much later, was the true business of that house, not simply frightening young women, but binding them. Aunty Ronke did not deal in gifts out of her own generosity. Rich men paid her, quietly, generously, for exactly this, a fresh, unspoiled destiny to feed into rituals that multiplied their business, their contracts, their sudden unexplained wealth. 7 girls in a room were 7 fortunes waiting to be signed over to men who would never once learn their names. "Each one that kneels here tonight," the old man intoned, dragging a small blade lightly across his own palm and letting 3 drops of blood fall into the clay pot, gives her share so that the ones outside this room may never lack again. Her portion becomes their portion. Her strength becomes their strength. One by one, the girls around her were made to drink from a shared calabash, their eyes glazing instantly, their bodies folding gently to the floor as though sleep itself had simply decided to claim them. When the calabash reached Ndidiamaka's lips, she drank, because refusing in that room did not feel like an option that existed. The liquid burned like hot palm oil poured straight down her throat. For a moment, she felt her own body begin to obey the same heavy pull that had taken the others, her knees weakening, her vision swimming at the edges. But something in her refused to fold. Perhaps it was her mother's voice, the one that had warned her from the very beginning. Perhaps it was simply the fierce, stubborn will of a girl who had spent her whole life fighting for everything she had ever been given. Whatever it was, her body began to convulse instead of surrender, her arms flailing, her scream tearing through the chanting like something the ceremony had never accounted for. "She is fighting it," one of the young men shouted, alarmed, as the old man's chant faltered. "This one is not going under." "Then finish her differently," Aunty Ronke snapped, her calm cracking for the first time that night. "We cannot let her disturb the other's portion." It was in that exact moment of confusion, men scrambling toward the black pot, the old man's rhythm broken, 3 other girls stirring from their trance at the sound of Ndidiamaka's screaming, that Beluchi and Tarela moved. Tarela grabbed a lantern and knocked it deliberately into a stack of empty crates by the door, sending a burst of dry flame and thick smoke rolling across the room. In the chaos and coughing that followed, Beluchi hauled Ndidiamaka's convulsing body away from the red cloth toward a side entrance she had clearly memorized long before that night. "Say she is dead," Beluchi hissed at Tarela over the noise. "Say it now, before they think to stop us." "She has stopped breathing properly. The sacrifice has failed. She is gone." Tarela screamed back into the smoke, loud enough for the old man and Aunty Ronke's men to hear. "Leave her. She is of no use to us dead. We will bury the problem ourselves before it brings trouble to this house." It was a gamble neither of them was certain would work. But grief and confusion have a way of making men careless, and in the scramble to save the ritual itself, Nobody moved to stop two girls dragging what appeared to be a corpse out into the darkness. Outside, they wrapped her quickly in a white wrapper pulled from the boot of the car, the same cloth used to disguise the dead on their way to burial, and laid her across the back seat as though she truly were a body being taken home for rites. Tarela drove faster than either of them had ever driven in their lives, checking the mirror every few seconds for headlights that never came. Beluchi knelt on the floor of the car beside her, two fingers pressed beneath Ndidiamaka's jaw, whispering her name over and over, checking again and again for the faint, stubborn pulse that refused, somehow, to stop. By the time they reached the hospital gate, Ndidiamaka's breathing had grown so shallow that the nurses on night duty first mistook her, too, for a girl already gone, until a monitor caught the faintest flicker of a heartbeat and the ward exploded into motion. It was the same white wrapper, still damp with smoke and bush dew, that the doctors cut away from her body as they rushed her into that cold, fluorescent-lit room where she would wake 3 days later to the sound of the two friends who had disguised her as dead in order to keep her alive, arguing, in whispers, behind a thin curtain. Chai. If your chest is already tight, drop a like on this video right now and answer me this in the comments. Have you ever trusted someone so completely, only to discover the person was never who you thought? Because what Ndidiamaka would learn about her two best friends was far more complicated than simple wickedness, and it was going to change everything you think you understand about betrayal. Back in that hospital bed, the whispered argument behind the curtain was not two enemies plotting a death. It was two frightened girls fighting over how to save her without losing themselves. I cannot let her die, Tarela, Beluchi's voice cracked. I cannot carry that. What kind of person will I become? And if Aunty Ronke finds out we rushed her to hospital instead of letting the ritual finish, Tarela snapped, you think we will still be breathing to feel guilty about it? You remember what happened to Igioma's cousin last year? They said she traveled abroad. Nobody has set eyes on that girl since. Ndidiamaka's mind spun. Igioma's cousin. The one before her. The name people whispered but never explained. Slowly, painfully, she understood Beluchi and Tarela were not the architects of this horror. They were its earlier victims. 2 years before, both girls had lain exactly where she now lay, poor and hopeful, chosen by Aunty Ronke's warmth, pulled into a shrine they never understood until the door had already shut behind them. To buy their own freedom from a debt they never truly agreed to, they had been forced to bring someone new, someone trusting, someone easy to love. Someone like her. Betrayal, she realized, can wear the face of desperation just as easily as it wears the face of evil. That truth did not forgive what they had done. But it made hating them a much harder, heavier thing to carry. The curtain shifted, and Beluchi's tear-soaked face appeared. You are awake, she breathed, relief and terror wrestling on her face at once. Ndidi, please, let me explain before you hate me forever. Weak, tubes taped along her arm, Ndidiamaka found her voice. You knew, she said. From the very first day you met me on that queue. You already knew what I was being prepared for. Beluchi did not deny it. She sank into the plastic chair beside the bed, and for the first time since Ndidiamaka had known her, all the confidence drained out of her voice. They caught us the same way, me and Tarela. 2nd year. Broke, hungry, desperate to survive the school. Aunty Ronke found us exactly how she found you, kindness first, gifts after, then the retreat. By the time we understood, we were already tied to her by things I cannot even explain to you. She said if we ever wanted out, we had to bring someone to take our place. One soul for another. That is how the whole thing works. And you chose me, Ndidiamaka said quietly. It was not really a question. I chose you because I loved you enough to believe I could protect you from inside it, Beluchi wept. I was wrong. I have never been this sorry in my life. Tarela stood by the door, arms wrapped tightly around herself, unable to step closer. When you started convulsing at the shrine, and would not go quiet like the other girls always did, something in both of us broke. We used the confusion to carry you out through the back gate ourselves. We told Aunty Ronke's men you had died on the way to the hospital, so they would stop hunting for you. It was the only lie that could buy you time. And Chidinma? Ndidiamaka whispered. Did anybody even call her? Beluchi's face crumbled. She was the one banging on the hospital gate at 3 in the morning, screaming your name, before the security men even let her pass the fence. She has not left this hospital compound since we brought you in. She is the one who called your mother. If your hands are gripping your phone tighter right now, like this video and comment the word strength if you believe Ndidiamaka's refusal to go quietly was the very reason she survived what should have finished her. Because what she chose to do next needed more courage than surviving that shrine ever did. When her mother arrived from Umuahia 2 days later, still wearing her market wrapper, dust from the long journey still clinging to her sandals, she did not scream, did not scold. She walked straight to the bed, looked at the needle in her daughter's hand, the yellowing bruise along her arm, and simply sat down, gathering Ndidiamaka's fingers into both of hers the way she used to when her daughter had malaria as a small child. "Mama, I did not want to worry you," Ndidiamaka whispered, tears already sliding sideways into her ear. "You did not want to worry me," her mother repeated slowly, "and yet here I am, sitting beside a hospital bed I was not told existed until a strange girl called Chidinma phoned me at midnight, crying so hard I could barely understand her. NWAM, worry is what a mother is for. Do not ever rob me of it again." Ndidiamaka broke down completely then, and told her everything, word by shaking word: Beluchi, Tarela, Aunty Ronke, the shrine, the 7 other girls, the drink that burned like fire. Her mother listened without once looking away, without once letting go of her hand, and when the story finally ended, she simply said, "So it is finished, this thing that almost took you from me. Now tell me, what do you want to do with what you know?" That question sat heavier in Ndidiamaka's chest than anything Aunty Ronke had ever poured down her throat. Stay silent, protect the 2 girls who ultimately saved her, and let that shrine keep swallowing girls like her, one broken friendship at a time. Or speak, knowing speaking might destroy every friendship she had left and put all 3 of their lives directly in the path of people who did not tolerate loose ends. She thought of 7 other girls kneeling in white wrappers, faces already emptied of resistance. She thought of Igioma's cousin, who had traveled abroad and never once called home. She thought of Chidinma banging on a gate at 3 in the morning for a friend who had once called her jealous. 3 weeks after discharge, trembling but resolved, Ndidiamaka walked into the office of a fellowship leader on campus, a woman called Pastor Adiz, who had once prayed with students during exam period and asked for nothing in return. She told her everything: the gifts, the retreat, the shrine, the 7 faces she could not forget. Pastor Adiz did not flinch. That same night, she made calls to people already quietly building a case against exactly this kind of operation, an effort that had been gathering testimony for over a year without a single girl brave enough to speak first. The raid came before dawn, 10 days later. Aunty Ronke was arrested inside that same duplex with the white curtains, alongside 2 men who had never once given the girls their real names. 5 of the 7 girls from that shrine room were found alive nearby, shaken but breathing. 2, sadly, were never found at all, a wound this story will not pretend to heal, because some losses do not come wrapped in tidy endings. Beluchi and Tarela were questioned for weeks, brought in separately, asked the same questions 100 different ways by investigators looking for cracks in their story. Because Ndidiamaka spoke on their behalf, describing exactly how they had risked everything to pull her out that night, the task force treated them as coerced witnesses, not accomplices. It did not erase what they had done. Ndidiamaka never fully became the girl she was before that night, and, truthfully, neither did they. But something grew between the 3 of them afterward, not quite friendship, but the quiet, complicated understanding shared only by people who survived the same fire and can still smell the smoke on each other. Chidinma never once said, "I told you so." She only moved her mattress closer to Ndidiamaka's side of the room when they returned to the hostel, and left the light on some nights, quietly, without being asked. If this story has taught you anything tonight, subscribe to this channel, share it with someone who needs to hear it, and drop the biggest lesson you are carrying away from Ndidiamaka's story, because more stories like hers are coming, and you do not want to miss the next one. Ndidiamaka graduated 2 years later than planned, but she graduated. She went home to Umuahia before anywhere else, knelt in front of her mother's stall, and held the woman's flour-dusted hands the way Aunty Ronke once held hers, except this time, it meant something true. "You warned me," she finally said. Her mother did not scold her. She simply pulled her close, the same way she had done since Ndidiamaka was small enough to carry on her back, and spoke the words her daughter would carry for the rest of her life. NWAM, in this world, the people who smile widest are not always the ones who wish you well, and sometimes the very people who hurt you most were only trying to survive the same darkness that almost swallowed you too. Forgive where your heart can manage it. But never again hand your whole trust to a stranger's warmth, no matter how sweet it tastes. Some kindness, my daughter, is a debt collector wearing perfume. And the ones who truly love you, like your Chidinma, like your own mother, they will not always be the loudest voice calling your name. Sometimes they are simply the ones still standing outside the gate long after everyone else has gone home. And if you have been listening closely tonight, my people, may that same warning follow you home.